Daddy's here.
This happened on the way to my in-laws' house for my husband's first death anniversary. My 4-year-old daughter, who has mysterious powers, suddenly shouted this and started running. I was bewildered, but she wouldn't move from in front of a building, insisting that her daddy was there. And then, unbelievably, my supposedly deceased husband came out, flirting with a young woman. Realizing that he had betrayed us, I was about to explode with anger. I'll never forgive you for deceiving us. However, due to my subsequent actions, my foolish husband ended up facing a hellish fate. Emma. It's time to go to daycare. At my call, my 4-year-old daughter responded with,
Coming.
and made her way to the entrance. When I opened the door, the early summer air wafted in, and I suddenly remembered the past. Come to think of it, I met him around this season. My name is Nancy. I am a 35-year-old office worker raising my daughter Emma. I met my husband Jason when I was 29. We got to know each other better after sharing a table at a diner I used to frequent. Jason is 2 years older than me and a businessman. He has a slim, small frame for a man and a gentle demeanor. When we started dating, I discovered that he was a bit clumsy and made many small mistakes, but I felt we complemented each other well since I'm relatively more organized. Deciding to spend my life with him, we got married after 2 years of dating. Both my parents and Jason's wealthy, single father greatly celebrated our union. A year after our marriage, our daughter Emma was born. Jason was a wonderful father who often helped with childcare when she was a baby. However, when Emma turned 2, our relationship started to deteriorate. Jason began going out more often, claiming it was for work, and he no longer helped with housework or childcare as he used to. Since I had also returned to work, I was often stressed, and we frequently clashed. Jason. You came home late again. I had a tough time managing everything alone today.
Oh, come on, as soon as I get home. I told you, it's for work.
Despite his claims, Jason smelled of alcohol, which irritated me. Doing the laundry and putting Emma to bed were supposed to be your responsibilities. Recently, I've been doing everything. Don't you think that's wrong?
I told you, it's for work. I'm working for the sake of our family, so why do I have to put up with your nagging? Maybe it's just that you're not managing well enough. Nancy!
Our conversations always went in circles without any resolution, and I found myself overwhelmed by work, housework, and childcare, leading to increasingly hectic days. One day, after about a year of this situation, Emma turned 3. It happened to be a Saturday, and since our daughter had been asking for it, we planned a family trip to the zoo. She's really looking forward to this. Don't break your promise. I repeatedly reminded Jason, but he simply replied,
I know.
But on the morning of that day,
I have to work today, so I can't go.
I was shocked and immediately reprimanded him sternly. I told you to keep this day free. It's Emma's birthday. Are you really canceling last minute?
There's nothing I can do about it. You two can go to the zoo without me.
I felt like he was dismissing our daughter as well, and I couldn't contain my anger. This escalated into a huge argument, causing Emma to start crying.
Please stop fighting, Mommy and Daddy.
I'm sorry, Emma. Everything's okay. While I hurried to comfort her, Jason hastily left the house. In the end, Emma and I went to the zoo by ourselves. That night, Jason returned home late, and we barely spoke to each other, remaining in a cold war. However, Since he was leaving for an overnight business trip the next day, I didn't want to send him off in that state. The next morning, I composed myself and saw him off with a deliberately cheerful tone. "Have a good trip, Jason. Be careful." But he didn't respond and left the house silently. Little did I know that would be the last time I saw my husband. 2 days after Jason left for his business trip, I received a call from the police. They informed me that my husband had disappeared from the overnight ferry he had been on. Only his car was left on the ferry. I spoke to the police in detail, and they confirmed that Jason had not disembarked at the destination port, according to the surveillance cameras. They suggested he might have fallen into the sea from the ferry. My mind went blank. The Coast Guard conducted a search, but they couldn't find him. In such maritime accidents, if 3 months pass without finding the body, the person is presumed dead. Unable to cope with the shock, my father-in-law handled the necessary procedures, and Jason was officially declared deceased. 5 months after the accident, we held his funeral. At the funeral, I broke down in tears in front of Jason's portrait, deeply regretting our last argument.
Mommy, where is Daddy?
My daughter asked, tugging on my sleeve with a puzzled look. "Emma, Daddy has gone to heaven,"
Oh, I see. He's far away.
she said. Seeing Emma like that brought tears to my father-in-law's eyes as well. I hugged my daughter, and despite my overwhelming grief, I vowed to protect her by myself. After that, I did my best to endure the days without my husband. However, since Jason's death, Emma has been somewhat unsettled. She would claim to see things that weren't there or say things like,
Daddy isn't in the sky, he's in a distant town.
Worried about her, I watched over her with all the love I could muster. Then, 3 months after the funeral, as I was about to take Emma to daycare one morning, she insisted on taking a different route than usual. "We don't have time today, let's do it another time, okay?"
No, we have to go this way. It hurts to walk on the usual path.
What? What do you mean? It hurts?
Today, we have to go that way.
No matter how much I tried to persuade her, she wouldn't listen. Eventually, I gave in, thinking, sometimes you have to indulge their whims, and took the longer route to daycare. As it turned out, there was an accident nearby where a car had crashed into the sidewalk on our usual route. If we had taken our regular path, we might have been caught in the accident. Is that what Emma meant by "it hurts"? From that moment, though I told no one, I began to believe that my daughter might have some kind of mysterious power. Time passed, and 1 year after Jason's death at sea, it was time for his first death anniversary. Emma and I, dressed in morning clothes, were heading to my in-laws' house a few stations away. When we arrived at the station near my in-laws' house and were about to take a taxi, Emma suddenly shouted,
Daddy's here.
With a look of delight, she broke free from my hand and ran off. I hurriedly caught up to her and tried to explain. Daddy isn't here anymore. But Emma firmly shook her head, her lips tightly pressed together.
Daddy is here. He's right over there.
She insisted, pointing towards a hotel in front of the station. She was so insistent that I had no choice but to follow her. We stood by the hotel bushes for 10 minutes. Emma, Daddy isn't here. Let's go. But then, an unbelievable sight met my eyes. A couple emerged from the hotel, arm in arm. One of them was unmistakably Jason. What? How is this possible? Why is he? Frozen in shock, I watched as my husband, oblivious to my presence, flirted with an unfamiliar young woman. They got into a taxi and left.
See? Daddy was here.
Emma said triumphantly. While smiling at her, I felt a surge of intense anger. After all the tears I shed worrying about him. How could he deceive us like this? I'll never forgive him. I squeezed Emma's hand tightly and resolved to thoroughly investigate Jason and the woman. 1 week later, I was waiting in front of the station near my in-laws' house when I saw my cheerful husband approaching with the woman on his arm. "Oh, Jason. It's been a while," I said, standing right in front of him. Jason looked as if he'd seen a ghost.
What the? Nancy, what are you doing here?
"Let's sit down and talk," I said, guiding the reluctant Jason and the woman to a nearby restaurant with private rooms.
How? How did you know I was here?
"I saw you two around here last week. Then I told your father that if you showed up, no matter what you said, he had to contact me."
You and Dad were in on this together.
After seeing Jason at the station on the day of his first death anniversary memorial, I went to my in-laws' house as planned and told his father everything. It was the first time his father learned his son was alive, and though he was more angry than happy, he tearfully apologized for Jason's betrayal. The next day, Jason visited his father and introduced the woman, saying,
She is my new girlfriend.
He even lied, saying he disappeared because he was fed up with my supposed infidelity and neglect. "You asked your father for money, keeping it a secret from me, didn't you?" he told me. "Not that he ever planned to give you any money."
What? Dad said he was happy I was back and promised to send me money behind your back.
"He was just playing along with your story. I asked him to." Jason was left speechless. I took out my phone and showed them a video. It captured Jason and the woman walking out of the hotel arm in arm on that day. Despite my shock at his betrayal, I had the presence of mind to record it as evidence. Seeing the video, Jason looked flustered and panicked. Ignoring him, I turned to the woman sitting next to him, who looked bored. "Your name is Amy, isn't it?"
What? How do you know her?
Jason stammered, clearly not expecting me to know the woman's identity. "I checked the passenger records of the ferry you disappeared from." Indeed, the woman sitting before me had been on the ferry that day. The port cameras had captured her disembarking with a large suitcase. "You hid in Amy's suitcase and got off the ferry, didn't you?" Given his small, slender build, Jason could pull off such a trick. When I realized this, I was both shocked and disgusted. Jason, sweating and looking nervous, finally admitted it.
Yes, that's right. I was seeing Amy even while I was living with you. We met at a bar and fell for each other.
"Why did you decide to disappear instead of divorcing me?"
I didn't want to pay alimony or child support. If I went missing, I figured I wouldn't have to.
Jason smirked as I remained silent.
I love Amy. I lost patience with you a long time ago. You're getting older, always nagging about chores and taking care of Emma. Of course I'd choose young, cute Amy over you.
Holding back my urge to retort, I asked how he managed financially during the year he was gone. He said he had used his savings from before we were married, kept in an account I didn't know about, to live a carefree life. When that ran out, he went to his father for help.
So, what are you planning to do now?
I asked. "Well, I think it's about time I returned. I'll come home for a bit. I need to get back to work soon anyway. By the way, is Emma doing well?" I was utterly dumbfounded by Jason's casual attitude. What are you talking about? You're officially dead.
What?
I explained to Jason that since he went missing in a maritime accident, he had been officially declared deceased, and even his family registry had been updated to reflect his death.
What? I'm considered dead? Are you serious?
Jason, with his foolishness, had believed that without a body he would simply remain a missing person indefinitely. By the way, we've already held your funeral, and everyone around us believes you're dead. Your insurance and driver's licenses should have expired as well. Of course, you've been deregistered from your company, I said. Upon hearing this, Jason turned pale.
What? What should I do now?
He stammered. I have no idea. For now, you'll have to take responsibility, I replied calmly.
Huh?
I calmly proceeded to demand a lump sum of $130,000 for alimony and child support combined.
What? There's no way I can pay that.
Jason shouted at me, his face turning red. Even his previously silent mistress Amy chimed in.
Hey! Don't mess with us!
Amy, of course, I'll be demanding compensation from you as well. You owe me $2,500. Pay up, okay? Jason and Amy erupted into a heated argument right in front of me. I watched coolly, sipping my coffee. Eventually, their quarrel escalated to discussions of breaking up, and Jason suddenly knelt down before me.
I'm sorry, Nancy. I'll break up with her and come back to you. Please help me. I can't pay that money, and I don't know what to do being declared dead and all.
Jason rubbed his hands together nervously above his head, pleading desperately for forgiveness. I'll never forgive you for deceiving and betraying us. I won't budge on the amount I'm demanding. Work it out yourself, you jerk. Leaving the stunned pair behind, I walked away from the scene. Subsequently, Jason's status was restored after his survival was confirmed, but we divorced soon after. The inheritance I had received when he was presumed dead technically had to be returned, but it was instead allocated as alimony and child support. Jason faced considerable backlash from various quarters for faking his death and, naturally, could not return to his job. Jason and Amy eventually broke up, with Amy paying me the compensation and then disappearing. Rumor has it she was disowned by her parents and had to work in nightlife to make ends meet. Currently, Jason has been sent to live with relatives who run a forestry business, where he works hard in the mountains. I hope he learns his lesson and reflects on his actions. As for me, I have moved back to my parents' house to raise my daughter. Emma is growing up and even helps with the housework, which is adorable. I plan to focus on my work while watching my daughter grow up. Late at night, my 4-year-old daughter woke me up.
There's a baby in the garden.
When I went to check, there was indeed an unfamiliar baby crying in our yard. My husband and I exchanged stunned looks. Then, our daughter said something strange.
This baby is saying she's my sister. Yay!
Beside our daughter, who was beaming with joy, my husband turned pale and started sweating profusely. I didn't miss that. Could this possibly be? From here, things would take a tumultuous turn. I'm Rachel, 32 years old. I'm married to Sam, who is 3 years older, and we have a 4-year-old daughter named Noah. We're a family of 3.
Rachel, our daughter Noah seems to have said strange things again.
It happens every day that my husband sighs in a bewildered tone, looking at me and our daughter Noah. In fact, my daughter seems to have a mysterious ability to communicate with animals and babies. At first, I didn't believe it either, but it seems too coincidental to dismiss. For instance, there was a time when my daughter was murmuring something to the neighbor's dog, and suddenly, she looked up with sparkling eyes.
Hey, the bakery is coming soon. The dog says it smells like bread. Noah wants bread.
I tilted my head at my daughter's peculiar words, and then, moments later, the bakery van indeed passed by. I was taken aback. Then, on the day we went to visit relatives to see their newborn baby who was only 6 months old. My daughter was murmuring to the baby and giggling.
This baby hid something shiny under the sofa as a prank.
Half believing, I peeked under the sofa, and there was the ring our relatives cherished but thought was lost. There are countless examples like that, but my husband never believed in our daughter's abilities.
Rachel, Noah, don't say things like that to other people because it's embarrassing.
But I truly believe that our daughter had some kind of mysterious power. Though, I just don't want Noah to be looked at strangely or misunderstood and hurt by others. With that in mind, I made a promise not to mention to anyone outside the house that Noah talked to animals or babies. Noah was a well-behaved child and always kept to my request. During this time, my husband, who already had frequent business trips, was away from home about 3 days a week. As a result, I found myself mostly raising our energetic daughter on my own while juggling work. It was honestly quite challenging, but whenever my husband was home, I made an effort to ensure he could relax and unwind. The beginning of the matter was a year ago. One day, out of the blue, $5,000 was withdrawn from our joint account. It was the money we had saved for our daughter's education. I was shocked and I confronted my husband when he returned home from work. "Hey, Sam. What did you spend our important money on?" When I pressed him for answers, my husband shrugged apologetically and said,
Please forgive me. I had an accident during my business trip, and I suddenly needed money.
"What? So, are you okay?"
Yeah, but the car got a little damaged, so it's in the repair shop. I think it'll take about 3 days.
Indeed, his car is missing from our parking lot. Well, if you are fine, then I guess nothing could be done about it. I just told my husband to put the money back into the joint account later and decided not to blame him further. However, from that day on, his behavior gradually became more and more strange. One day he would say, there was trouble at work, and another day he would say he lent money to a friend who's in financial trouble, constantly finding reasons to borrow money from me.
Please, I swear I'll pay you back next month.
In the end, I believed him and continued to hand over $500 from my own wallet to him every month. However, with each passing day, my dissatisfaction with him only grew. "There's no sign of you giving me money back at all. How long am I supposed to wait?"
I'll pay you back on next month's payday.
I heard that same promise last month, though. It felt like I was being brushed off, and I couldn't help but let out a deep sigh. Despite lending him money separately from our monthly allowance, my husband always complains about not having enough money. "I can't lend you any more. First, you need to pay back the $5,000 you withdrew from the account."
That's exactly why I'm in a tight spot right now. If I can't borrow from you, I'll have to borrow from a consumer finance company.
Wait, are you kidding me? I was told like this, unable to refuse. I reluctantly had to take out money from my own wallet again. This is getting really suspicious. There's no way there are work troubles every month, or that friends keep needing money. The distrust towards my husband gradually grew stronger, and I sometimes felt stomach pains from stress. One late night, during those days of hardship.
Mom, wake up. There's a baby in the garden.
No way, Noah. You must be dreaming. I tried to go back to sleep, but my daughter persistently shook me.
What's going on? Stop making noise.
My husband, who had been peacefully sleeping, grumpily scolded Noah, but then we clearly heard the sound of a baby crying. Wha? No way.
Could it be a neighbor's baby?
I'm telling you, there's a baby in the garden. We have to go quickly.
With that, our daughter dashed out of the bedroom. As my husband and I followed her, she headed towards the balcony overlooking the garden. The cries grew louder and louder. When we reached the balcony, we saw a baby wrapped in a blanket in our illuminated backyard. Who would leave a baby in our garden?
Even if it's a prank, this is inexcusable.
While we were stunned and bewildered by the surprise, our daughter jumped for joy.
She says she is Noah's sister. Yay!
Wait, what?
Don't say weird things.
I was taken aback, but my husband scolded our daughter a bit too loudly. Despite that, our daughter stood confidently, with her hands on her hips, looking up at my husband.
It's true. This baby is Noah's sister.
Refusing to back down against my husband, our daughter stood her ground with a confident tone. My mind was in turmoil, and I could only watch in astonishment as the two argued. Then, my husband's phone, which was in his pocket, vibrated. I didn't miss the moment he looked at the screen, his eyes widening and his face turning pale. What's with that expression just now? But it's not the time to dwell on such things. Hey, we need to contact the police first.
Wait. Let's bring this baby inside first. It must be cold being left outside at night, right? Yeah.
In this situation, it's normal to contact the police. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about my husband's behavior. With suspicion lingering, I carried the baby inside, gently wrapped her in a blanket, and comforted her. If I were to believe in my daughter's mysterious power and her words, then there's no doubt this baby is my daughter's sister. However, I haven't been pregnant or given birth after Noah. Which means, I don't want to believe it, but considering Sam's suspicious behavior so far, it's just too suspicious. While maintaining a calm demeanor so as not to arouse my husband's suspicions, I resolved to uncover the truth.
I'll take her to the police in the morning.
Following my husband's words, I decided to take care of the baby at our home for tonight.
I have work tomorrow, but I feel sick because of this strange baby. I'll go to bed first, so take care of that kid, will you?
Without taking any responsibility, my husband hurried back to the bedroom as if fleeing from the situation. Normally, I would be angry, but at that moment, I saw an opportunity. While my husband slept, I completed all the necessary preparations. I just need to reveal the truth. Even though I was thinking this, I couldn't hide my inner turmoil, and my hands trembled with anxiety. Sensing my troubled emotions, my daughter gently took hold of my hand, offering me comfort.
It's okay, Mom. Noah is on your side.
Thank you, Noah. Perhaps my daughter doesn't fully understand what's happening between me and my husband. Even so, for my daughter's sake, I gathered my resolve to confront my husband and clarify everything. And so, the long night came to an end, and we welcomed the next morning. As soon as my husband woke up, he seemed quite flustered.
I've been called into work suddenly. When I come back home, I'll go to the police, so please take care of the baby during the day.
With those words, he hurriedly left without even having breakfast. Take care, have a safe trip. I saw him off with a smile, just like always. As soon as Sam left the house and drove away, I took action immediately. First, I drove my daughter and the baby to my parents' house, which was about an hour away by car. Then, I took out my smartphone. Actually, while my husband was sleeping, I unlocked his phone with his fingerprint and installed a GPS tracker. I relied on it to drive my own car and head to the location it indicated. I arrived at an old brick apartment building. Not knowing which room it was, I walked slowly, listening intently at each door. Eventually, I heard the sound of a heated argument between a man and a woman coming from a room on the ground floor.
I'm asking you, what were you thinking about leaving the baby at our place? And what's with that message?
The voice accusing the other was unmistakably my husband's.
Just as it says. I wrote, "Take care of the child," didn't I? Did you even bother to read the message properly? Or are you just incapable of understanding?
The woman's voice retorting against my husband was shrill, echoing all the way to the outside of the entrance. I listened for a while, but their argument showed no signs of ending anytime soon. I'm sure this is the place. With that certainty, I grabbed the doorknob of the room where the voices of the argument were coming from. The door swung open forcefully, as it seemed to be unlocked. Inside, my husband looked startled as he saw me.
Rachel, what are you doing here?
Hello, Monica, thank you always for taking care of my husband. I politely greeted the mistress, ignoring my flustered husband, and closed the front door. Monica seemed quite shaken by my sudden appearance.
How do you know my name?
I won't say who, but I heard about you too from some little girl. Using the mysterious power my daughter Noah possessed, I had managed to gather some information from the baby about the situation. Apparently, my husband Sam met you, Monica, at the bar where you worked and where he entertained his business clients, and you got close and had a child together?
Why the hell do you know about that?
Did you hire a detective or something? I can't believe this.
While my husband was clearly flustered, the mistress, on the other hand, seemed composed, almost brazen. Sam, all the money you've been taking from me, it was for the baby's birth expenses and child support, wasn't it?
Well,
Not only that, but you're living with Monica, aren't you? There were sandals and shoes in the entrance, which seemed to belong to my husband. As I went to pick them up, Sam quickly snatched them from me. Your suspicious behavior is the biggest evidence, Sam. As I glared at him, my husband trembled and turned pale. Sam had been using the $5,000 he withdrew from our savings for Monica's childbirth expenses, including hospitalization and the cesarean section surgery. Additionally, he had been paying her $500 a month as child support. On top of that, he had been lying about business trips and spending 3 days a week at his mistress's house. I had been thoroughly deceived all this time. When I said it, my husband was shocked, as if wondering how I knew, and he stood there with his mouth half open. So, about the truth behind this baby, I know it's caused by the fact Monica has engaged to the CEO of a venture company, right? You left the baby at our place because she was getting in the way, didn't you? After leaving the baby on our doorstep late at night, she sent a message to my husband. I saw that message with my own eyes when he unlocked his phone. He probably never expected that I knew all this. My husband's expression was startled, and he instinctively reached for the pocket where he had his phone. The reason you desperately tried to stop me from contacting the police was because of that, right?
You. How much do you know?
Sweat started to bead on my husband's forehead, looking like a frog stared down by a snake. Amidst this, the mistress began glancing at her watch repeatedly.
Hey, could you take your marital disputes elsewhere? It's almost time for my date, so could you two just leave now?
Well, you're talking as if it's none of your business. After getting involved with someone else's husband, do you really think you won't face any consequences?
It's not like that. I was just having fun with Sam. I thought it was a mistake when I got pregnant, but now that I'm going to be the wife of a CEO, I'll just reset everything.
My husband seemed shocked by Monica's selfish remarks and was left speechless.
There's no way I'll accept that. What were you thinking, dumping the baby onto me like that?
Shut up. Besides, it's your fault for getting me pregnant in the first place. Come on, hurry up and put on your shoes.
Monica continued to push my husband without any hesitation.
You are the father, so he should take responsibility and raise the child. Your daughter at home will be happy to have a little sister, won't she?
As a parent with a daughter of my own, I couldn't forgive such remarks, and I found myself clenching my fists tightly. At that moment, I considered slapping this woman, but then I heard the sound of a car engine. I opened the door and looked out onto the road, where a luxury car was approaching the apartment. The car pulled up right next to the apartment.
Monica, I came to pick you up since you didn't show up at our meeting spot.
A man said as he stepped out of the car.
Oh no, you're already here.
Judging by the mistress's panicked reaction, this man must be her new fiancé, the CEO of the venture company. At that moment, I had a brilliant idea. Nice to meet you. Actually, my husband has been taken care of by Monica. I spoke loudly and cheerfully, and the fiancé seemed bewildered.
Huh? Oh, really?
While Monica tried to stop me in a panic, still trying to put on her shoes, I quickly approached the man. Actually, last night, Monica left a baby born between her and my husband in our backyard. So, that's why I came to hear the situation with my husband. Before Monica, who had rushed over, could cover my mouth, I blurted out the truth. The fiancé was surprised.
Huh? I heard Monica was single.
He looked at her with suspicion.
That's a lie. Everything this woman says is nonsense, so don't believe her.
Monica desperately tried to make excuses while sweating profusely, but the CEO of the venture company wanted to hear the details, so I told everything I knew. During this time, Monica tried to deceive somehow, but I managed to overpower her and reveal everything. The man then said,
What kind of woman are you?
And then to Monica,
I don't want a liar like you. Don't ever contact me again.
he said coldly and got into his car. As the CEO of a venture company, he probably wanted to avoid such scandals.
Wait, there's more to this. Please let me explain.
Monica tried to cling onto the car, but when I stopped her, her fiancé drove off without even opening the window.
No. My bright future as the CEO's wife.
With a thud, Monica dropped to her knees and sat down on the spot, realizing what had just happened. Then she quickly looked at Sam.
Hey, Sam. I'm sorry. Let's continue to get along well, okay? Let's take back the child from this woman and live happily together as a family of 3.
She leaned into her husband's chest, looking up at him with a pleading gaze. What kind of person is she? I didn't steal her baby. She's the one who irresponsibly left the baby in our yard. I was gaping at her sudden change in attitude, and it seemed Sam had had enough of being manipulated by Monica. Furrowing his brow, he glared at her.
Enough. I can't deal with you anymore.
As he pushed away the mistress who had clung to him, she had a fierce expression like a demon.
Huh. I'm saying I'm going back with you.
Monica, furious, scratched her husband's face with her nails, sparking a violent fight between them. While I watched in silence for a while, there was no sign of it ending. It takes 2 to tango. I sighed deeply, realizing I didn't want to get any further involved in their fight. I purposely clapped my hands loudly. All right, that's enough. Both of you. Feeling exhausted, I stopped them, being fed up. Anyway, I'll be demanding compensation for the affair from both of you. Sam, plus a divorce settlement.
Hold on a second. Don't talk about breaking up.
This is not a joke. I don't have any money to pay compensation.
Though they initially protested against me, they gradually quieted down under my stern gaze.
Rachel, I'm truly, deeply sorry. I'll break up with this woman, so please forgive me.
I'm not sulking. Don't you understand? I've just had enough of you.
Please, let's talk alone.
No, I won't. After all that has happened, there's no way I could forgive them. I showed my unwavering determination with a firm attitude.
Ma'am, I'll take care of the baby myself, so could we please skip the compensation?
Raising your own child is your responsibility as a parent, isn't it?
But
I won't listen to any excuses. With anger in my voice, my husband and his mistress finally knelt down and begged for forgiveness. Seeing them like that, I realized that I had completely lost any feelings for my husband. Regret your actions. Pay the compensation even if you have to borrow money.
I can't bear not seeing Noah's face again.
It's your own fault. Don't come near me. My husband, who had been kneeling, now tightly grasped my hand. And then, he looked at me with eyes full of sorrow.
Rachel, listen carefully. Noah will be sad if we get divorced.
Using our daughter as a shield like that, that's your despicable side, isn't it? Don't worry, I'll make sure she forgets the face of a father who cheats. When I said that so coldly, his grip loosened, so I seized the opportunity to shake him off.
If you leave me, what am I supposed to do in the future?
Survive on your own. Goodbye. I'll mail the divorce papers to you later. As I walked away, leaving the two kneeling at the entrance, I noticed a crowd had gathered around the apartment. The door was left wide open, so everyone heard everything. Huh? My. The place was flooded with people, presumably residents of the apartment or neighbors, murmuring things like it's an affair, or well, isn't that shameful? With so many onlookers witnessing the whole affair, it would be quite challenging for the mistress to continue living in this apartment. Honestly, I don't care what happens to her. I quickly left the scene and drove back to my parents' house, where I had left my daughter and the baby. Afterward, I received a total of $50,000 in compensation from both of them. Furthermore, I divorced my husband and obtained custody of our daughter, so I ended up raising her at my parents' house. Consequently, I entrusted my parents with childcare during the day while I worked. Moreover, since the mistress refused to care for the baby she left in the garden, I decided to take the child in and raise them myself. Anyway, I'm just constantly amazed by how hopeless Monica is. In the end, my husband and Monica, who were in that apartment, couldn't bear the gossip from the neighbors and moved elsewhere. I heard through the grapevine, however, they continued to argue incessantly and soon parted ways, each struggling to repay their debts. I named the baby Lucy. She is growing healthy and strong. My daughter seems very happy to have a little sister.
She says she's happy to have a kind mom.
I decided in my heart to cherish both of my precious children.
You were hiding $200,000. Thanks to that money, I was able to buy a nice house.
One day, my mother-in-law secretly bought a house without telling me. Furious, I confided in my husband.
Well, just let her do what she wants. Forget about the $200,000.
He started taking my mother-in-law's side. I couldn't forgive them for doing this to me. I'd sworn to take revenge on both. My name is Betty. 5 years ago, I married Matt, who worked at the same food company. Our busy work schedules made it hard to find quality time together, but we managed to get along well. However, my relationship with my mother-in-law isn't great. It all started during our marriage introduction at their house.
Once you marry Matt, you'll naturally support him and focus on the household, right?
I replied, actually, I plan to continue working even after marriage. Matt is fine with it. She was surprised.
What? Normally, when you marry, the wife should focus on the household. When I married my late husband, I quit my job and became a full-time homemaker.
Deep down, I felt that way, but of course, I couldn't say it directly to my mother-in-law. I could only manage a wry smile and deflect the situation.
Is Matt really okay with you continue to work? He comes home tired from work every day, and if you're not there, won't it burden him?
Mom, that's just your perspective, right? I'm fine with it. Let Betty do what she likes.
My husband's defense helped keep my mother-in-law from making more snide remarks, and after that, we left their house without further incident. Thank you today. If you hadn't stood up to your mom, she might have said even more hurtful things.
My dad passed away, so she raised me all alone. She must have worried about a lot of things. Don't let it bother you too much.
He stands up for me and cares about me. I'm lucky to be married to such a wonderful person. As we headed back to our apartment, I secretly felt happiness inside. After marrying my husband and living harmoniously together for 5 years, one day he approached me with an unexpected request. He wanted us to live with his mother.
Hey, considering how often we're both away due to work, what if Mom moved into our apartment?
Honestly, I'm not too keen on that idea.
I guess it was a sudden strange suggestion. Forget I mentioned it.
It was out of blue, and I couldn't easily agree to it. Thankfully, my husband backed down, and I felt relieved that we wouldn't be sharing our living space. About a week after my husband expressed his desire for us to live with his mother, I returned home late one evening. Work had been exhausting, and as I stood at the entrance, contemplating making dinner, I noticed the door was already unlocked. It seemed my husband had come home earlier than usual. Normally, he'd send a message saying he was on his way, but perhaps he forgot this time. Without much thought, I stepped inside. Hello.
Ah, you're finally back.
Oh, were you here? Is Matt home?
Matt hasn't returned yet. I have a spare key from him, so I let myself in.
What's going on? He gave a spare key to his mother. I never heard anything about that. I stood frozen in surprise as my mother-in-law suddenly appeared before me. She looked at me and said,
Instead of standing there, why don't you make dinner? I've been waiting for you to come home.
I stammered, haven't you had dinner yet? She replied,
No, not yet.
It's quite audacious to barge into someone's house and expect to have dinner, I thought. But I couldn't just send her away. All right. I understand. I can only make something simple, though. Is that okay? Wait, did some foodstuff disappear? I don't remember using that much. It seemed like the contents of the refrigerator had decreased since I last checked yesterday.
Make something simple and quick. I'm starving.
I replied, Please wait a moment. I'll prepare something right away. And so, I hurriedly cooked dinner and served it to my mother-in-law. She took a sip of the soup I had made and said,
What is this? It's terrible.
Ha! What did she just say? Clearly, she called my soup terrible.
Did you not hear me say it's terrible?
I wasn't mistaken after all. I heard correctly.
You're always working, so no wonder you can only make such bland dishes. Quit your job and focus on your household duties.
But Matt says my cooking is delicious, I protested.
That's just flattery, obviously. Don't you understand even that?
It seemed my mother-in-law still disliked the fact that I continued to work after marriage. For the next hour or so, she continued to make snide remarks.
I'll be dropping by more often, so make sure to take care of things at home, she said as she left, seemingly satisfied with venting her frustrations.
After that, 30 minutes later, my husband returned home. Hey! Did you give a spare key to your mother?
Yeah, I did.
Today, she suddenly showed up here, and it was such a surprise. And on top of that, she ate the meal I prepared and had the audacity to say it was terrible.
Well, it's not a big deal. Sometimes these things happen.
What kind of response was that? She just waltzed in and insulted the food I made. And yet, I was supposed to endure it. Well, it's your fault for giving her a spare key in the first place. When I said that, my husband got furious and argued back.
You should have told me you were going to live with my mother. I'm exhausted, so I'm going to bed. I don't need dinner.
And then I was the bad one. At that moment, it wasn't you who understood. With that one sentence from my husband, whom I thought was on my side, my spirit felt shattered. The next day, and the day after that.
Your house is a mess, and you're not cleaning properly. The laundry is all wrinkled. It's embarrassing.
Every day, she comes over to our house, complains, and then leaves. If that were all, maybe I could endure it. But it was becoming unbearable. After my mother-in-law started coming over to our house all the time, I noticed something strange about a week later. The groceries are disappearing again. And the detergent I had stocked up on is gone too. Our apartment is within a 10-minute walk from my mother-in-law's house, and it's clear that something is amiss when our food and household items keep vanishing. I didn't want to suspect her, but I was sure my mother-in-law was sneaking in and taking things. One day,
When she visited our house, I mustered the courage to ask her directly. You haven't been taking our groceries or household items, have you? I hoped I was just imagining things. Her response was shockingly casual.
Oh, you've caught me.
She admitted to helping herself to our belongings. I would appreciate it if you didn't take things without permission. These are our household items and groceries, after all.
It's not a big deal, it's my son's house anyway. Besides, you're hardly ever home because of work, so it's not wasteful to use up the groceries.
How could she act so nonchalant and unapologetic? While it was true that my husband and I lived here, the audacity of her actions baffled me.
Oh, by the way, I noticed you've saved up quite a bit, around $200,000. So, I used that money to buy a new house.
I was dumbfounded. What on earth was she talking about?
You don't need to play innocent. You've been hoarding it in your passbook, haven't you? I was quite surprised when I opened it.
I had absolutely no idea what she was talking about. She used $200,000 in savings to buy a house without permission. And without anyone's approval. But wait, I can't withdraw money from the account with just the passbook, right? Do you know the PIN? I asked. Her response was infuriating.
You had a little note with the PIN tucked into your passbook, didn't you?
Oh, shoot. I had indeed kept a memo with the PIN, thinking no one would ever look at my passbook.
More importantly, I wanted to live in a better house. It worked out perfectly.
With a triumphant laugh, she left our home. I really couldn't forgive her. She had brazenly used our money without permission. When I told my husband about her actions, he dismissed it.
Let her do what she wants. Forget about the $200,000.
He treated it as if it were someone else's problem. Letting her use such a large sum of money without permission. I couldn't tolerate this any longer. Despite already being taken advantage of, I decided it was time for revenge against both. Letting her use such a large sum of money without permission, I decided to invite my mother-in-law to our house the next day and ask her again if she really bought the house. To have solid evidence, I discreetly activated the voice recorder on my phone before talking to her. Yesterday, you said you used $200,000 from my bank account to buy a new house. Is that true?
Yes, it's true. I've already paid the down payment, and construction has begun. After all, I have your bank book. It's as good as bought, ha ha.
I pressed further. Just having the bank book isn't enough. How do you plan to withdraw the money? Smirking, she showed me my personal seal.
How? I have this seal.
I couldn't believe it. So, you took my seal without permission, that's theft. She retorted.
Call it whatever you want. You're useless around the house, and I had no idea you'd saved up so much. At least I'll put it to good use.
It's fine. I'll give you the bank book. Thank you for coming all this way today. Despite my anger, I managed to restrain myself from hitting her and sent her home. I had evidence that she had taken the bank book and seal from our house. But for now, she could continue to be blissfully ignorant. The next day, I called my mother-in-law and invited her to our house to discuss the situation. I'm willing to give you the bank book, but withdrawing money requires personal identification. Could you leave the bank book and seal with me? I'll take care of the withdrawal. Her response was surprising.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well then, I'll bring them over right away.
Of course, there was no way I would withdraw $200,000. Besides, today, you can't just withdraw such a large sum without proper identification. How clueless could she be? Focusing only on the money, she seemed completely oblivious to the fact that her actions were criminal. With the bank book and seal back in my possession, I headed straight to the police station.
What happened? Is there some kind of incident?
Yes. My mother-in-law took my bank book and personal seal without permission and tried to buy a new house.
Huh? Aren't you the one buying it?
No, it's not me. My bank book and seal were stolen. I want to file a complaint. The police listened attentively to my story and accepted the complaint. That night, I informed my husband that I had submitted the complaint to the police. Your mother took my bank book and seal without permission, so I reported it to the police. She might get arrested.
What? Why would my mom get arrested?
Why? Can't you see that what she did is a serious crime?
Even so, you didn't have to go to the police.
It's not just about letting her do whatever she wants. Why should I hand over a large sum of money to that old hag?
Hey! Don't call my mom an old hag.
Is it okay for in-laws to do anything they want? Should I just stay silent if they come to kill me? Enough of this nonsense. I didn't save up all this money just to give it away to my mother-in-law. She's nothing but a greedy old hag.
That's enough.
My husband stormed off to his room after hearing my words. When he returned to the living room, he handed me a divorce paper.
I never thought you would say that. Sign this.
I never thought he would always have such a thing. Well, if you're going to say that, I guess I can't help it. I was already fed up with you. Are you trying to threaten me? I'll sign it, so give it to me quickly. Perhaps he didn't expect me to sign it so easily. My husband looked a little surprised. After I finished signing, I showed the divorce paper to my husband. There. Is this okay?
Yeah.
Well, I'll submit this to the city office. I guess he didn't want to see me anymore. After that conversation, he hurriedly left our house even though it was midnight. He was probably going to his mother's house. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Hello. What's the matter? It was my husband calling.
I also told my mother that you filed a police report.
I replied, yeah, so what?
Could you withdraw the complaint?
What? Impossible, I retorted. There's no way I'll withdraw it. Repentance. I won't forgive him for such a superficial apology. He'll probably do the same thing again anyway. As I thought that, my husband called again. What's going on? There's nothing to talk about, and I was about to go to bed. But it wasn't my husband on the other end of the line. It was my mother-in-law. She tearfully apologized, but does she really think that's enough to be forgiven? I won't forgive you just because you cried and apologized. And saying you didn't mean any harm. That's easy to say. Taking my bank book is one thing, but even my personal seal. I retorted.
But, I wanted a house. I've always lived in apartments until now.
Are you seriously trying to use such a trivial reason to take someone else's money? You're a real jerk, I said. Why should I have to give you money for your silly reasons? I couldn't fathom it. Well, why didn't you ask your son?
My son doesn't have money.
Yes, I know. Even though we both work, I've been managing the household finances, I continued.
Then when I saw that there were $200,000 in your bank account, I couldn't help myself.
I see. But you understand that this isn't something that can be resolved with a simple apology, right? Reflect on it in prison. That money is what I've worked hard to save even before marrying your son. I can't forgive you just because you had a momentary lapse, I concluded. I tried to hang up the phone after saying that, but my mother-in-law persisted.
Wait. I have a favor to ask.
You're asking for a favor at a time like this. You've got some nerve.
I mentioned that I paid the down payment, didn't I?
Yes, you did. What about it?
I've already paid $70,000 from my longtime savings as the down payment, and now I can't just stop the construction. So, could you lend me $200,000? I promise I'll pay it back.
How delusional are you? There's no way I'll lend you money. Not only did you take my bank book, but you also stole groceries and daily necessities. I don't believe someone like that will repay me.
But what should I do then?
I have no idea. Figure it out yourself. Ha.
But at my age, I can't get a loan anymore.
That's your own doing. Relying on someone else's money leads to situations like this. Why don't you ask your son to take out a loan for you? I couldn't help but laugh just imagining my mother-in-law in a flustered state. I'd already said what needed to be said, so maybe I should hang up the phone then. Just as I was thinking that, my husband interrupted and tried to continue the conversation.
Hey! Can't you do me a favor? Are you going to abandon my mother? You've also received help from her, haven't you? Even if it's not the full amount, please help her out.
Ha! I haven't received any help from her. She comes over every day, makes snide remarks, and leaves. She even has a spare key, but she never helped with household chores. What exactly do you mean by help? After I retorted, he fell silent. He must have said that out of desperation. Perhaps he thought appealing to my emotions would get him some assistance. Then, that's how it is. I won't offer any assistance. Good luck.
Wait. I'll figure out a way to take care of my mother, and we won't inconvenience you. Can't we avoid divorce?
Well, it's too late now. Your mother is more important to you than I am, right? You never really stood up for me.
I'm truly sorry. From now on, I'll also prioritize you, Betty.
You don't need to care about me anymore. Tomorrow, I'll be a stranger. You can happily live with your beloved mother. After saying this to my husband, I hung up the phone. Feeling bothered by the thought of another call, I turned off my mobile and went to sleep. It seemed my husband didn't come back that day. They were probably comforting each other. The next morning, I took the day off from work and submitted divorce papers at the city office. From now on, my husband and I are complete strangers. Naturally, I don't care what happens to that mother-in-law. For the 3 days until I moved out of the house, my husband didn't bother having a proper conversation with me. Of course, I didn't initiate any conversations either. For now, I plan to stay at my parents' house after leaving this one. It's an hour's commute from work, but I can still manage. As I was leaving the house where I had lived until now, my husband said just one thing.
I apologize for everything up until now.
I ignored him and walked away. Before marriage, I loved him so much, but it ended so abruptly. Strangely, I don't feel sad or anything. In fact, being able to distance myself from this messed up family feels refreshing. There's no way I'll forgive them, no matter what they say. It's their fault for always siding with my mother-in-law and ignoring me. When my mother-in-law confessed to stealing my bankbook and buying a house, I wish my husband had genuinely gotten angry with her. Both my mother-in-law and ex-husband underestimated me. I won't just be a victim, I'll fight back. Now, they're bracing themselves for a life of hellish loan payments. Let them work themselves to the bone. It's what my mother-in-law wants. They both brought this upon themselves. Serves them right. As I drove toward my parents' house, that's what I thought. A week later, the police called to inform me that they had arrested my mother-in-law on suspicion of theft. Apparently, the fact that we weren't living together was crucial evidence for the arrest.
If you had been living with your mother-in-law, we might not have been able to make the arrest. There was a possibility of it falling under the category of familial theft.
I see. Thank you for arresting her. I expressed my gratitude to the police and hung up. Hopefully, this will make my mother-in-law reflect on her actions while she's in prison. Just as I was thinking that, my ex-husband called.
Hello. My mom got arrested.
I already know. The police called me.
It's impossible for me to keep paying the mortgage alone when my mom isn't here.
So what? Don't tell me you're asking for my help again.
Well.
Don't ever call me again. I ended the call unilaterally. To ensure he wouldn't bother me further, I blocked his number and messaging app. 1 month later, I heard this story from a colleague.
Hey, do you know? It might be impolite to tell you this, but it seems Matt has quit the company.
My ex-husband and I both worked at the same company, but I was an office worker, and he worked on site. Since we rarely saw each other, this was news to me. Strangely enough, my mother-in-law's theft arrest also became a rumor within the company, and it seems my ex-husband couldn't stay there anymore. Of course, I didn't go around spreading such information intentionally. As for what happened to my husband afterward, I have no idea, but he's probably struggling with loan repayments right about now. 3 years later, I got married. The person I married had no connection to the company. We met elsewhere. He genuinely cared about me. My in-laws also adore me, and I love them too. Perhaps I can finally grasp true happiness. I sincerely hope that nothing like what happened back then will occur again. How did you find this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.